thought that FDev always acts simplistic in the delivery of their mysteries does not sit well with me. We often see that they use mythical references or otherwise cryptic clues to pave the roads of their mysteries. Yes, they do have the more simplistic or arithmetical investigations that go to A, scan B, or fly to C type of gameplay, but these types of stories are quickly resolved by the efforts of the Canon Research Institute. We also see that although many mysteries have been resolved, often through scientific eyes, one mystery for over 10 years has eluded player efforts to shed light on the topic of Raxxla. Maybe a scientific eye is not what is needed to solve these types of mysteries. With this in mind, it either leaves the three conclusions that Raxxla is not accessible within the game, either to be added at a later date, or Raxxla is never to be added to the game, or that there is something that we are missing or choosing to overlook, falling victim to confirmation bias, or a disregard to potential clues because the investigator does not show an interest in the esoteric or philosophical and historical references. Expanding on last week's video, I have potentially discovered new information that may be connected to our little unsolved mystery. You see, if you go to the Algol system and you visit that unidentified signal source that was mentioned in the last video, you will find Cestus, Bane, a mysterious pilot who, when fed with a fuel limpet, flees the system, as though to invite pursuit. These mysteries lean heavily on historical individuals and events, or mythological individuals or events and places. The pilot's ship has many names, and on my previous video, it is noted that the word on Cestus' ship was the word signal, painted to the left of his vessel. But here's the thing, it has been noted that this individual's vessel has many names. Upon first glance, people may disregard these potential clues, but one thing that I have been made aware of recently is that although the names of the vessels are often not the same, there are connections between these names that may, and I do stress may, allude to some kind of riddle or a series of clues for pilots to follow, as hints for those with eyes to see. In this video, we will be exploring theoretical connections, how they could connect to this game and the history of each reference. This is essential for the understanding of how they interact with one another. I will be asking the question, do these names and the pilot's theorized connection to the Dark Wheel have some kind of connection to that mythical station's location, and indeed to the location of Raxxla itself? These are the known names of Cestus Bane's vessel. Although the in-game explanation to the fact that the name of the ship changes is the procedural nature of how NPCs are made within the game, the name list is pre-populated with names of significance, as though these names have been pre-selected for Cestus' vessel. Before I continue, I would like to thank the work of Tanith, who is an associate of the independent Raxxla Hunters group, the largest dedicated Raxxla Hunters organisation for the game. Tanith has managed to compile a list of the names that Cestus uses for his Cobra. For a link to the aforementioned group and to Tanith's separate theory on this topic, please refer to the link below. So we have the names Bounty, Worry, Penitent Space, Signal, Pristine Portion, Blessing, Iron Agent, Z Yuan Yuan, Whispering Afternoon, Trial, Line, Pristine Concord, Arculus, Kaina Ling, Wave, Carmine Ring. Some of the names I've just mentioned have been seen multiple times. Most, if not all of the names, are directly related to water or lines, or connected to places or deities who were connected with water or lines. Some of these names are mentioned multiple times, and some are only mentioned once. I have highlighted some of these names, and one name in particular which pricked my superstition, connecting otherwise isolated clues to a potential broader picture of the solving of the toast or riddle of the Dark Wheel. Granus, also known as Moganus or Amacolatanus, was a Celtic deity of classic antiquity. He was regularly identified with Apollo as a Celtic version of Apollo, presumably in Apollo's role as a healing or solar deity. Granus was frequently worshipped in conjunction with Sirona and sometimes with Mars and other deities. One of the god's most famous cult centres was the Aquae Granae, now Aachen in Germany. Aachen means water in Old High German. Sapphire Line was an underground network for rescuing downed British pilots during World War II in Europe, allowing them to flow back into British hands from preordained lines of escape. Condatis was an ancient Celtic deity worshipped primarily in northern Britain, but also in Gaul, modern France. He was associated with the confluences of rivers, in particular with County Durham in the north of England. Condatis is known from several inscriptions in Britain and a single inscription found at Alonnes-Sarthe in France. In each case, he is equated with the Roman god Mars. The theonym Condatis derives from the stem condat, meaning confluence, which in itself is identical to the word conflux. Condatis is the conjunction of two rivers, especially rivers of approximate equal width. It is also worth mentioning that the Condatis name is the most frequent encounter when you confront Cestus Bane. Kurakami or Okami is the legendary Japanese dragon and Shinto deity of rain and snow. In Japanese mythology, the sibling progenitors Izanagi and Izanami gave birth to the islands and the gods of Japan. After Izanami died from burns during the childbirth of the fire deity Kagasuchi, Izanagi was enraged and killed his son. Kagasuchi's blood or body, according to different versions of the legend, created several other deities, including Kirakami. Another name for the ship you will encounter has been noted as Cardinal Heaven. The four symbols are mythological creatures appearing among the Chinese constellations along the ecliptic and viewed as guardians of the four cardinal directions. These four creatures are also referred to by a variety of other names, including four guardians, four gods, and four auspicious beasts. They are the Azure Dragon of the east, the Vermilion Bird of the south, the White Tiger of the west, and the Black Tortoise of the north. Each of these creatures is most closely associated with a cardinal direction and a colour, but also additionally represents other aspects, including a season of the year, an emotion, virtue, and one of the Chinese 5 elements: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. Each has been given its own individual traits, origin story, and a reason for being. Symbolically, and as part of spiritual and religious belief and meaning, these creatures have been culturally important across countries in the Sinosphere. Urashima or Arashi is another name. Taro is a classic Japanese folktale about fishermen who rescue a sea turtle and is rewarded with a visit with a magical underwater palace. This palace is called Ryugu-jo. After a period spent there, he is given a mysterious casket and he is sent back to the surface, only to discover that centuries have passed and his loved ones are long gone. In despair, he opens the casket, causing him to age rapidly and die, embodying a tragic story of the irreversible passage of time. This story is curious as to its connection to love or grief. Siren was a mythological creature of Slavic origins with the head of a beautiful woman and the body of a bird. In contrast to the Greek sirens, the siren is a divine bird of paradise that sings songs of immense bliss, but those who hear her song disregard matters of earth and follow her to their doom. This half woman, half bird is directly based on the later folklores about sirens. She is usually portrayed wearing a crown or with a nimbus. Siren sang beautiful songs to the saints, foretelling future blisses. People would attempt to save themselves from Siren by shooting cannons, ringing bells, and making other loud noises to scare the bird off. A beast that lures men to their death, singing songs as a law Interesting. Juenae is a Loa, a Haitian voodoo creature who rules over the sea, as well as the patron Loa of fishermen and sailors in voodoo, especially in Haiti. He is believed to live on an underwater island and be married to Ezreali Freda and La Sarine. He goes by several titles, including Koki Lame, meaning shell of the sea, Koki Dor, meaning golden shell, and the angel in the mirror, the eel, and the tadpole in the pond. The phrase angel in the mirror is curious. I'll come to that later. Many Raxxla theorists often ponder at the inclusion of the word Omphalos, located in the Raxxla Codex entry. The word Omphalos was first imagined in the myths of ancient Greece, and Omphalos is an ancient Greek term for navel that refers to a sacred conical stone at Delphi, considered the centre of the world. The word can also describe a spiritual or literal central point, a religious artifact, or more broadly, the concept of a world centre. The Omphalos stone at Delphi was central to the Greek belief system, representing the Earth's navel. But what is often less understood or discussed is that there were two Omphalos stones, the second of these taking influence from its Greek counterpart. John Dee was born in Tower Ward, London. Dee attended Chelmsford Chantry School from 1535 to 1542. He entered St John's College, Cambridge in November 1542, aged 15, graduating between 1545 and 1546. His abilities were recognised and he became an original Fellow of Trinity College, Cambridge, on its foundation by Henry VIII in 1546. In the late 1540s and early 1550s, he travelled around Europe, studying at Louvain, and he lectured in Paris on Euclid. He studied under Gemma Fritius and became friends with the cartographers Mercator and Abraham Ortelius. Dee also met, worked and learnt from other continental mathematicians such as Federico Comandino in Italy. He returned to England with a major collection of mathematical and astronomical instruments. In 1552, he met Girolamo Cardano in London, with whom he investigated a perpetual motion machine and a gem supposed to have magical properties. Dee was offered a readership in mathematics at the University of Oxford in 1554, which he declined, citing that he was offended by the English university's emphasis on rhetoric and grammar over philosophy and science. The grammar part I can relate to, referring to the occasional salty comment from individuals caught up in fits of rage in regards to mistakes in pronunciation and differences within dialect. But anyway, I digress. In 1555, Dee joined the Worshipful Company of Mercers, as his father did previously, through its system of patronymy. In the same year, Dee was arrested and charged with lewd and vain practices of calculating and conjuring, because he had cast horoscopes of Queen Mary and Princess Elizabeth. The charges were raised to treason against Mary, and Dee appeared in the Star Chamber and exonerated himself, but was turned over to Bonner for religious examination. After his exoneration from heretical charges, Dee presented Queen Mary with a visionary plan for preserving old books, manuscripts and records, and he proposed that he establish a national library to Queen Mary, but his idea was not accepted. Instead, he expanded his plan for preserving old books, manuscripts and records. He expanded his personal library in Mortlake, acquiring books and manuscripts in England and on the continent. Dee's library, a centre of learning outside the universities, became the greatest in England and attracted many scholars. When Elizabeth I succeeded her sister's bloody rule, Dee became her astrological and scientific advisor. He chose her coronation date and even became a Protestant. Publicly, of course. Many whispers in the courts and halls of 16th century England tell the tale of dark worship and heretical esoterica in regards to the actions of John Dee and his friend Edward Keeley. The following verses are one of those so-called whispers. In the waning years of the 16th century, when Elizabeth I's reign trembled between brilliance and ruin, her astrologer and magus, Dr. John Dee, was said to have sought a place where the pulse of the earth beat loudest. Dee believed in the ancient idea that every land had its Omphalos, a navel of power through which the currents of the unseen world could be touched. Through cryptic calculations, Enochian invocations, and the shifting of stars, Dee traced the line of force that led not to Westminster nor to the Tower, but to a patch of marsh and pasture that lay far beyond the city walls, where the Thames curved like a serpent. This place would centuries later become known as Mudchute Park. There, on a moonless night, Dee arrived with his black mirror, crystal hue stones, and circle chalked upon the very earth, and placed by his side, so the legend whispers, was Elizabeth I herself, disguised beneath a hood, for she wished to taste the breath of the unseen. Dee spoke the calls of the angels, in a tongue not heard since before the flood, and the ground shook through a giant heart's beat beneath it. Out of the soil rose a stone, smooth and curved, glowing faintly with inner fire. Dee declared it the Omphalos of Albion, the very navel of England's hidden soul. But all was not well. When Elizabeth laid her hand upon it, visions tore through the night, armies of iron, ships of smoke, cities taller than a castle, and fire raining from the skies. Dee tried to steady the torrent, but the Queen cried out, her own crown burning with a phantom flame. The legend says that her power and England's destiny became bound to that stone in Mudchute, and the empire that followed drew its strength as much from occult bindings as from cannon and coin. When dawn came, the stone sank beneath the earth, leaving only churned mud and broken glass. The Queen swore all present to silence. Dee himself returned often, cloaked and unseen, pouring strange powders upon the ground and whispers to the earth. When John Dee first traced the lines of hidden geometry that led him to the east of London, he was not alone. Amongst these so-called witnesses was Christopher Marlowe, playwright, spy, and rumoured initiate of mysteries forbidden. Marlowe had long been fascinated by Dee, not only for his Enochian conjurations, but for his visions of an empire and England touched by angelic fire, girded in secret knowledge. Some say Marlowe sought to test Dee, others that he yearned to bind his own name to immortal powers, as he had bound Faustus to the devil with ink and word. So it was on that night Elizabeth herself cloaked her identity and followed Dee to the marshland where Mudchute Park now sprawls. Marlowe was there, pen and knife in hand. He stood outside the circle as Dee spoke the calls of the angels. When the Omphalos stone rose from the earth, Marlowe felt verses ignite in his mind, words of fire, terrible and beautiful. He began to mutter them aloud, and the air shimmered. Dee, furious, warned him to still his tongue, for poetry could shape the ritual as sharply as Magnus's own chants. But Elizabeth, enthralled, bade Marlowe continue, and so Marlowe did. His voice wound into Dee's invocations, twisting them. The visions that struck Elizabeth were not only England's future, but of her own death. Her crown cracked, her line ended. The Queen shrieked, and for an instant her face appeared skeletal, as though time had devoured her. Dee wrenched control, driving the stone back into the earth, but in the chaos, a splinter of it, small and jagged, broke loose and struck Marlowe's hand. He clutched it, bleeding, and swore to keep it. The Queen, pale and trembling, forbade him forever speaking of what had passed. Yet Marlowe did speak, though not openly. His plays riddled with whispers of necromancy and the price of power, were said to be veiled retellings of that night. His doctor Faustus became the echo of Dee's ritual, and for the vision he had stolen. Some claim that the fragment of the Omphalos burned him from within, marking him for death, and when, years later, Marlowe was slain in Deptford, stabbed in the eye, where there were those who swore it was not a tavern brawl, but Elizabeth's secret order, lest he loose the full truth of the mudshoot ritual, the Queen's terror, and the stone that bound England's fate. Even now, it is said, on certain night when the park grows still, one can hear faint lines of verse rising from the grass, not Dee's Enochian, but Marlowe's voice, whispering of crowns, blood, and of bargains struck beneath the London sky. Even today, walkers in Mudshoot Park claim that on misty mornings, a low hum rises from the soil, like a breath beneath the grass. Dogs shy away from a certain hollow. Some say the Omphalos still lies buried, and if one places a palm flat on the ground, visions flicker in the mind's eye, the fate of nations, the shadow of Elizabeth's soul, the echo of Dee's forbidden ritual, and visions of a sword of great power, the sword of King Arthur himself. These verses are of course the legend, not confirmed as canonical within the history of England. It is however a well-known myth in London, and to those who study ancient history and those who are familiar with the works of Christopher Marlowe and John Dee. The angel in the mirror, as I have mentioned before, may also refer to the historical use of scrying mirrors, such as John Dee's obsidian mirror for angelic communication, a practice that emerged in Renaissance occultism and incorporated elements from other traditions. Mirrors were seen as portals between spiritual and physical realms, used for divination or contacting spirits. A famous example is the obsidian scrying mirror I have mentioned. He used his mirror to contact angels with the help of his associate Edward Keeley. His artefacts included was a smooth stone about the size of a child's head, which Dee claims was given to him by angels. It was described as a kind of shoe stone or scrying stone used as a medium to communicate with angels, spirits, or divine intelligences. Dee considered it the navel of the earth, a link between the sky and the earth, through which angelic visions could be received. He believed it was essential in his Enochian workings, the angelic communications he and Edward Keeley pursued in the 1580s using John Dee's obsidian mirror, referring it as the Omphalos in all but name. The stone itself is black and polished, likely made from obsidian or another dark crystal, and still survives today in the collection of the British Museum. In early British imperial folklore, John Dee is said to have performed these communications with angels at a specific location, a location which is publicly accessible to this day. The Omphalos on the Isle of Dogs, near Canary Wharf, is a raised cobbled circle in Mudshoot Park, believed by legend to be the site where John Dee performed his legendary ritual in 1593 to help establish the British Empire, a term which he is also rumoured to have coined originally. There is, though, no official explanation for its origin or use. It is said to sit on a ley line connecting significant sites in East London and was chosen due to its position at the centre of the Isle of Dogs and its possible location on the remains of an ancient hill fort. The Isle of Dogs was a central location for London, and Dee may have chosen it to establish a magical centre for the empire. Investigations suggest that this site may have been built upon the remains of Caer Ruas, an ancient British hill fort, which Dee believed was once the dwelling of Merlin himself, linking it to the myth of King Arthur and his court magician. The circle is on a key ley line, a hypothetical energetic pathway that connects places of geological and historical significance. Dee was a complex figure, represented for his work in navigation, mathematics and cartography, but revered for his questionable practices. Dee's mathematical knowledge helped facilitate English voyages to the New World. He had a cosmographical view of the universe, depicting divine and material realms. John Dee was deeply involved in the search for the Northwest Passage during the reign of Elizabeth I, providing astrological and mathematical advice, preparing maps, and instructing explorers like Martin Frobisher on navigation. As Elizabeth's advisor and a leading geographer and mathematician, G was consulted by many explorers who sought a sea route to the Pacific. His expertise in navigation and mapping made him a critical, often overlooked figure in the Tudor attempts to find this fabled passage, or rift. Dee compiled and drew maps, such as his 1582 map that depicted potential routes to the Orient, including the Northwest Passage. His maps incorporated existing information and theoretical geographic ideas, reflecting his efforts to gather and organise knowledge about the routes of the British Empire. Dee's work inspired many later expeditions to the Arctic region of Earth. In order to find this fabled passage, Martin Frobisher, inspired also by the efforts of Sir Walter Raleigh in the southern lands of America, led 3 expeditions to the region in the 16th century, landing on Baffin Island, finding what he thought was gold, yet turned out to be iron pyrite or fool's gold. Sir John Franklin led a 2-ship expedition in the search for the rift. His ships, HMS Terror and HMS Erebus, grounded on ice, ending in the deaths of Franklin and most of his crew. Those who survived attempted to walk to Nunavut, the nearest location of Western civilization, and a rescue. The remainder of his crew did not survive this journey. The Rupis Nigra, meaning black rock, was a mythical phantom island. It was believed to be a black rock located at the North Magnetic Pole, or at its geographical North Pole itself. Described by Gerardus Mercator as 33 French miles in size, it provided a supposed explanation for why all compasses pointed to this location. The idea came from a lost work titled Inventio Fortunata, and the island featured on maps from the 16th and 17th centuries, including those of Mercator and his successors. Mercator described the island in a 1577 letter to John Dee, and I quote,
"In the midst of the 4 countries is a whirlpool, into which there empty these 4 indrawing seas which divide the north. And the water rushes round and descends into the earth, just as if one were pouring it through a filter funnel. It is 4 degrees wide on every side of the pole, that is to say, 8 degrees altogether, except that right under the pole there lies a bare rock in the midst of the sea. Its circumference is almost 33 French miles, and it is all of magnetic stone."
Inventio Fortunata, or Fortuna, meaning fortune making or discovery, is a lost book probably dating from the 14th century, containing the description of the North Pole as a magnetic island, surrounded by a giant whirlpool and 4 continents. No direct extracts from the book have ever been discovered, but its influence in the Western idea of geography in the Arctic region persisted for several centuries. The book is said to be a travelogue written by a 14th century Franciscan friar from Oxford who travelled to the North Atlantic region in the early 1360s, making some half a dozen journeys conducting business on behalf of King Edward III. He described what he found on his first journey to the island beyond 54 degrees north in a book, Inventio Fortunata, which he presented to the King Edward III. By the time Atlantic explorers were seeking information in the 1490s, the Inventio had gone missing, and was only known for a summary in a second text, called the Itinerarium, written by a Barbituan traveller named Jacobus Noyen. Noyen's summary was the basis for the depiction of the Arctic region on many maps, one of the earliest being Martin Behaim's 1492 globe. By the late 16th century, even Noyen's text was missing, so most of what we know of the contents of the Inventio Fortunata, other than its use on maps, is found in a letter from the Flemish cartographer Gerardus Mercator to the English astronomer, who I previously mentioned, John Dee, dated April 20th, 1577. This letter is now located in the British Library. Noyen's information came in a very roundabout way. In 1364, a priest from one of the Atlantic islands had returned to Norway, bringing with him an astrolabe which he had received from a visiting Franciscan friar. In exchange for a religious book, he made a detailed report to the King of Norway. Copies still survive of a social and geographical description of Greenland by a local church official named Ivar Bardason, who turns up in Norwegian records in 1364. So this much of Noyen's story tallies well with reality. Noyen seems to have obtained this information from Norwegian sources some time later, neither he nor the priest having actively seen the Inventio. Noyen's account mixes probable facts with what may have been his own attempts to research the background, stating that Greenland was first settled at the orders of King Arthur, whose army supposedly conquered the North Atlantic islands during the period known as the medieval warm period. Noyen's words were also important, as he also refers to the indrawing sea, which drew ships northward. He is quoted to have said,
Nearly 4,000 persons entered the indrawing seas who never returned. But in AD 1364-8, of these people came to the king's court in Norway. Among them were 2 priests, one of whom had an astrolabe, who was descended in the 5th generation from a Brussels citizen. All 8 were from those who had penetrated the northern regions in the first ships.
Ivar Mercator or Noyen summarised the priest's report, and I quote,
Leaving the rest of the party who had come to the islands, he journeyed further, through the whole of the north, and put into writing all the wonders of those islands, and gave the King of England this book, which he called in Latin Inventio Fortunatae.
John Dee compiled and drew maps based on this information, such as his 1582 map that depicted potential routes to the Orient, including the Northwest Passage. His maps incorporated existing information and theoretical geographic ideas, reflecting his efforts to gather and organise knowledge about the routes for the British Empire. To the jewel that burns on the brow of the mother of galaxies, to the whisperer in witch space, the siren of the deepest void, the parent's grief, the lover's woe, and the yearning of our vagabond hearts, to Raxxla. The toast to Raxxla may yet be a riddle to solve rather than a literal toast. As we know, there is no confirmation that this is a toast that the Dark Wheel engage in, and it is my belief that these verses may contain literal instructions for you to find the Dark Wheel itself as a method of delivery. Similar to a method of delivery typical for frontier developments, Michael Brooks, Robert Holdstock, David Braben, and those that have contributed to the Elite storyline over the years. They often use historical or mythological parallels and use elements of those stories to place in-game events. Medieval and Renaissance maps sometimes depict a giant black mountain at the North Pole called Rubis Nigra. It was said to be magnetic, drawing in ships and attracting the needles of compasses, often leading to their doom. As you may know, the magnetic north and true north are separate locations, and magnetic north is known to move over time. If John Dee's information is a potential connection with the toast of the Dark Wheel, it could point out to a clue that the centre or Omphalos of our galaxy is different to some kind of object or location that is loosely to the centre of the Milky Way, but not the exact location of the centre. The magnetic poles trace a small, rough ellipse each day, deviating about 80 kilometres from the average position. This daily variation is caused by charged particles from the Sun interacting with the magnetic field of our planet. Over the decades and centuries, the average location of the poles slowly drifts. This has become more noticeable and rapid in recent years. Reverse image scans are inconclusive as to the possible inspiration to Mercator and John Dee's mythical landscape, with the best candidates being Mount Loki or Mount Thor on Baffin Island. According to esoteric sources and leyline mappings, several London buildings and sites align with this John Dee's Omphalos hub, some of which have been rumoured to have been placed there as an homage to the work of John Dee. They form a star-like pattern that echoes John Dee's Monas Hieroglyphica and Mercator's polar map. All Saints Church in Blackheath is aligned as Dee's eastern gate for Enochian rituals. Blackheath's name evokes the Rupus Nigra. Dee reportedly used the site for scrying. Queen's House in Greenwich is where Dee advised Elizabeth I on navigation and empire building. It lies on the Greenwich Meridian, a global centre. The General Wolfe statue in Greenwich Park symbolises imperial conquest, Wolfe's victory in Quebec. It aligns with Mudschute's Southern Ray. Royal Naval College in Greenwich, tied to naval exploration and magnetism. It parallels the Thames as an indrawing sea. Millwall Park Paths near the Mudchute Omphalos form Dee's glyph, a symbolic compass for cosmic unity tied to Merlin and Arthur myths. St Alphege Church in Greenwich, built on the site Dee linked to early Christian Druidic energy near Thames alignments. The location of Dee's supposed Omphalos has the Thames River coil around it similar to a snake. The river's horseshoe bend around Mudchute mimics Mercator's whirlpools. John Dee saw it as a protective magnetic ring. These lines emanate from Mudchute Park, going beyond the boundaries of London itself. Going back to the riddle, the jewel that burns on the brow, if we use John Dee's understanding and then we transfer it over to a galactic scale, the jewel that burns on the brow could then be the event horizon, its accretion disk, shining as though it was a jewel. To the jewel, meaning to go to the centre of the galaxy or to look at the centre of the galaxy. The brow meaning the top or the peak, as alluded to using John Dee and Mercator's Rupus Nigra myth. The whispering witch space could hint at things that you don't see directly but you can feel, potentially meaning to look in the direction and listen, as though a signal is emanating from the background cosmic noise, possibly leaking from witch space. The parent's grief, the lover's woe, the yearning of our vagabond hearts. This possibly alludes to humanity's eternal drive to seek what is lost, like Dee and King Arthur's Northwest Passage. At Communication Array Delta 69, this site log mentions gravitational anomalies, where the occupants of this listening post disappeared. Another hint that something mysterious which is related to gravity is out there. Please refer to the video linked above for more info on this location. Jasmina Halsey's visions when she went missing suggested that she had some kind of communication with what she has described as cosmological deities. They spoke to her whilst she slept in her escape pod. She is quoted to have said, "I saw a place of extraordinary beauty, a paradise. It was truly wonderful. This was no dream, it was a glimpse of something very real. We must find this place. It could be our future." Gan Romero, an otherwise normal technician who went missing after his wife claimed that he'd been having strange dreams of cosmic entities. These dreams encouraged him to seek out a mystical place, and he stole a vessel on the station that he worked at and fled into the black. As we have seen with Hyford's Cache, which was found years prior, it was locked, yet it would eventually lead players to the events of Salvation and his Proteus wave. FDev often hide crashed ships out in the black for players to discover. Crashed vessels are regularly being discovered to this day. I wonder if Gam's ship is still out there. Missing pilots or people who have claimed to have visions or had spoken to angels. Are you seeing a pattern yet? The landscape signal is a legendary mystery within the Elite Dangerous community. It is an audio signal which, when placed into a spectrographic imager, draws a picture of a mountain peak off-centre with a lower element to its left. When you look at the image, it's almost as though the reflection in its visual avatar draws a picture of a mountain raised from a body of water. The mystery of the landscape signal is thought to have been solved. Although not confirmed, it is worth mentioning that certain researchers believe that the landscape signal is an homage to a research paper that studied non-thermal electrons observed emanating from the Sagittarius A supermassive black hole. If reversed, the image appears to be similar to one section of the landscape signal, and a canon member has theorised that this has been placed into the game as a somewhat obscure homage. Although I do not have evidence to provide you that would disprove this theory, something does not sit right with me. I guess I've watched too many Y-Files. But I digress. The landscape signal's location has been theorised to exist in between the stars. By listening to the noise emanating from the loose location of Sagittarius A, you can fine-tune its origins and hone onto it as though using its audio as a compass. As is mentioned in the works of MATTIUS communique to John Dee, this theorised mythical magnetic mountain existed in the centre of a whirlpool, which was the source of all compasses' reactions. It is known to have been a mythical reference to magnetic north, not true north, with those scholars of the day not understanding how Earth's magnetic field is generated. By understanding that there was a magnetic anomaly at the top of the world, even if the understanding was mistaken, ancient sailors used its effect to navigate around otherwise difficult terrain. Although the Northwest Passage was not found until the early 20th century, it was understood to have existed as far back as the 1300s, that there was some kind of northern current or northern push. This suggests that there was a body of water which connected the Atlantic and the Pacific. Perhaps by using the landscape signal as a faux magnetic north, we can use its audio pull to navigate in ways that have been achieved or attempted by Frobisher and many other explorers of the time. The Raxxla logo also comes into question if you are versed in the story of John Dee and Mercator's magnetic mountain myth. It is mentioned and visualised that the Black Mountain was surrounded by 4 continents, with this place being the centre for which all water would rush to. Could the Raxxla logo not be a mere symbol for this topic? Could it be that the symbol is a clue to look for a central point but not the true centre, which is connected to 5, not 4, separate sectors or regions of space? The Sigillum Dei Amyth is a geometric diagram symbolising divine truth and the harmonious structure of the cosmos. It encodes the Enochian names of God and angels through Hebrew letters, numbers and sacred geometry, representing the emanation of divine energy from unity. The central circle and point symbolises the divine essence, or I am, from the book of Exodus. It has 5 sides. I often think to myself, even if all this information is true, what can the player do to actually solve this mystery? Many of the often contradictory videos that I have covered, myself and the contributors of this channel's content, have often used speculation on what lies behind permit locks, or insisted potential visions of the game's future, or claimed that hidden information exists within this game, but often the player base of Elite Dangerous and my viewers are not given with some kind of conclusion that would at least give you some activity to complete, or a place to visit or find in order to prove or disprove them. This video is different. This theory is claiming that there is a pseudo-magnetic North Pole, so to speak, in the centre of the galaxy map. This video is claiming that there is a map that you can place on top of the galaxy map which will guide you to so-called locations. This video is claiming that this so-called mountain is the landscape signal, an homage to the Rupish Niagara, and thus by using this location you can guide yourself to otherwise overlooked areas of space that may, and I do stress may, lead to the Dark Wheel or Raxxla itself. There are many of these mysteries that have been confirmed to exist that use mythological clues to guide players. On the screen is the location of what is thought to be the area where the landscape signal exists. It is theorized to exist in between the stars, not accessible itself, almost in between the walls of the game's reality. The landscape expedition was one of the most comprehensive studies done on finding the signal's source, and as such, I regard it to be our best shot at finding some true meaning to this mysterious signal. So, bookmark the 3 systems that are below this video for you to paste, head out to its location and use it as though John Dee intended. Maybe you'll find that fabled passage or rift, leading to great wealth and fortune. These are my thoughts anyway. What are your thoughts on this topic? Do you have any other information that you wish to share with the community and with myself? If so, please drop a comment below. Thank you for watching. Please like the video and subscribe if you've not already done this. I have a members section with members exclusive video, and if you wish to donate to the channel, there is an option to do so. Links are below. Please also make sure to turn on all notifications so that you are notified when I release a future video. I am noticing that multiple people have told me that my videos are often released, yet they are not told that they have been released. Clicking this bell is really important. Until next time, Commanders, 07.